DJI under fire. I'm sorry, we're only allowed to say nice things about DJI in this live stream. So I don't.
It's not going to be a great story because DJI is under fire, and for probably a good reason, because it sounds like they did a real stupid thing. DJI has insisted that basically they're drone tracking Aeroscope, right? We've talked a little bit before, I think, about Aeroscope, but Aeroscope is the way that they can track any drone in the air, essentially. So you set up an Aeroscope station, and you hit a button, and then it will just show you information about all the DJI drones that are in the area that it can see with Aeroscope.
And this was known.
And this was known. However, the assumption of what DJI kept telling people when the news kept asking about it, DJI kept saying it was encrypted. They said, "Don't worry, it's encrypted. It's not a big deal. This is happening, but it's encrypted. So don't worry about it. The decryption hardware is theoretically only sold to the good guys, right? Stuff like that."
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that was not true. And DJI said it was not encrypted. It was unencrypted. And hey, whoops.
So this is a weird story. There are several things I take from this story. The first is the claim that it's encrypted kind of was, it never really made sense to me why that was relevant, because it was known that many governments have the Aeroscopes. So like if everybody's got the Aeroscope anyway, what do you care that it's encrypted? They know where you are.
Because a random Joe can't know where you are, right? That's the idea.
Right. Well, and
there's a limited number of Aeroscopes, and they all have licenses, and DJI knows where they are and who they sold them to, and all those
and maybe other people do too. But it's about your exposure and your sort of threat surface. That if you think that the packets are encrypted and only people with Aeroscope can know where you are, then you might make certain decisions based on that. But the other thing that stood out to me was how freaking typical it is with DJI that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. I 100% believe that executive or whoever it was who said that they were encrypted believed it, and that he asked the person that he thought for sure would know, and they said it was encrypted. I don't think that he was being dishonest, because they said it was an American person, an executive or engineer, who said it was encrypted. And then after getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, he went back to China, and finally they said, well, actually, it's not encrypted. I buy that. I've seen so much of this bullshit from DJI. And it's why when someone says, oh, the V3 goggles are going to have such and such a feature, I'm like, you don't know. Until the day it drops, you just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've seen this over and over again where, we talk to like a representative that we'll have, or they'll even say they talk to somebody else. And every time it's like 30% maybe is like legitimate information. And the rest is like hearsay or something an engineer told them or something, and an email got misinterpreted for anything like that. So we've also got a link in the show notes to that project. So if there's a guy who is the hacker in question in the article who has a GitHub with the information. Of
course he does.
So there's still work in progress, but there is a lot of work that has been done. And he details the whole thing. He goes through the process that he used to figure all this stuff out. And he basically had to do all this frequency offset detection and phase correction, equalization, symbol extraction, all that kind of stuff. He worked through all that stuff to figure out how it all works.
And this is cool because on the one hand, if you say to yourself, wait, you mean my DJI drone is broadcasting packets that identify me, identify its location, and they're not encrypted, and anybody could theoretically pick them up, you go, oh, well, that's bad. I don't like that. But if you say, this open source project is trying to learn how to fake these packets, and then anybody could just broadcast these packets to say anything they want, and that's kind of interesting, kind of denial of service obfuscation. But the very next thing that happened is DJI will just release a firmware update that encrypts it. And then, because of course they will, which is another thing I've noticed with DJI, which is as soon as you actually back them in the vague direction of a corner, they just snap their fingers and do whatever you wanted in the first place and fix the problem.
Right.
Which is what we're seeing with the DJI goggles and the margarine project. In my opinion, The fact that
Well-
Margarine rooted Goggles V2 means immediately DJI is going to release a V3 that locks out that and fixes some of the things that people were complaining about. That's my theory.
Gotcha. I think we'll know that when they do the update for the V1 and V2 goggles that locks them out as well.
Yeah.
Until they do that, to me, like, I don't know that they're directly targeting Margarine. So
We'll see.